Hello, testing. Good afternoon. I just wanted to say we will start in 3-4 minutes. The other session was running a little bit behind, so we are still getting our speakers here on the podium. For those who are still upstairs, if you don't mind to come a bit closer to us, we feel so lonely here, so don't hesitate to come closer to us. That would be really appreciated. So if you don't mind, even from the back, if you want to engage, it will be really an interesting session and an engaging session. So please come a bit closer if you don't mind. There are so many seats here. There's nothing reserved. It's actually only reserved for you. So really appreciate that you make the effort to come closer to us. Thank you so much.
Should we put another seat right here then, or I get to a seat?
I can stand, no, see? Okay. Stefan, you're after Carlos, before Oliver. When you're not. Shall we start? Okay. Shall we start? Let's go to the podium together and then Good afternoon, everybody. Warm welcome to you. So this is going to be an amazing session, as you can see from our panelists already. And let me introduce ourselves. I was going to say I'm Johannes Juding.
And, well, let me introduce Shaider Badi, Managing Director of Open Data Watch.
And here is Johannes Juding, Manager of Paris 21 at the OECD. It's really terrific to have you here. And let me quickly say what is the style of today's session. So you have to sort of keep your energy up because we really need you. This is not sort of like presentation, question and answer. We're going to have some quick flash presentations, 5 minutes. And you're going to see how great we're going to do with 5 minutes presentations. And then we're going to come to you with some sort of ideas and some questions to see whether, do we have the right list for going ahead and what else can we add or subtract or prioritize from that list. So with that said, shall we go ahead, Johannes? Anything? Okay. Are you ready? This is going to be really fast moving. So the purpose, I am just going to do quick slides for setting up the scene for this presentation. I need the clicker.
Let me get it for you.
So Johannes is going to get it for me. Okay. So this is modernization of capacity building, and what we've heard this past few days is clearly showing us that we have a very ambitious agenda ahead of us with SDGs. Anybody who walked into the World Data Forum, of course, you would know that this is not business as usual, and we need to do things differently. So the purpose of this afternoon session is to find out, through our discussions, what are those changes? What are some of those changes that we need to make and incorporate into the capacity building efforts for statistical systems, national statistical systems? And how big, how fundamental, how extensive those changes are going to be, and what the level of effort is going to be. So, and we will hear that from our very knowledgeable speakers. So how do I change slides? Oh, there. Okay. So just to get us started, we've used a few slides to show that the capacity in the past 10 years or so, since we've had MDGs, of course, there's a lot of efforts, thanks to many of you in this room and many of the people at the panel, the capacity of statistical capacity in countries have hugely improved. One measure that we've used is the Statistical Capacity Building Indicator of the World Bank, and as you see between 2004 and 2014, as the colors get darker, you see that capacity in many countries has improved, but we still need to do a lot more. Another measurement that we've used is, as you see, the SDG, one of the SDG targets really needs indicators with full disaggregation produced at national level. But if you look at the based on the MDGs, we will see that we have made some progress since 2012 in having that, in having data produced, majority of data produced in countries, but much more is needed to be done there. So our hypothesis is that the SDGs and the data revolution require a fundamental shift in how we think and do capacity development in data and statistics. And this is what the big topic of today's discussion is, and hearing from our speakers. So one thing is we've moved into this agenda with certain level of capacity that I showed you from MDG times. It has improved, but we also see that the demand for data and the sort of the whole atmosphere for data demand is changing from MDGs and to SDGs. Of course, in MDGs, we were talking about very developing nations. We're not talking about global. So everybody, not only developing countries, but globally, everybody has to move, expand their statistical systems. Expansion of indicators, of course, the level of disaggregation. We just finished this panel called Leave No One Behind. And it was just a wonderful panel, but you see that so much needs to be done for that agenda. And of course, the financing, we want to make sure that the financing for this new system for the SDGs is mobilized, both in terms of volume and also in terms of type of financing. You've seen this picture in many other publications. Sorry, that we worked of the changing ecosystem. We see that there's national statistical systems are still for us at the center of this system, but we see that there's expansion of data sources, expansion of data users, and we really still want to make a huge impact with data. So how do we respond to these changes? And what are the shifts for improving capacity? So these are the three questions that we have for today. What, for our panelists and for you, what needs to change in capacity development, what can be maintained and should be strengthened, and who should be doing what. So with that said, we're going to move into our, right, Johannes? We're going to move to our first 4 flash presentations. And the order of that, and very quick, just introduction, you know many of our speakers. We're going to do 4 presentations, and then we come back with a quick summary and check in with you, and then we're going to do the last 4 presentations, and then we're going to come to you with input from you. So the first presenter is going to be Lisa Bersales. Everybody knows Lisa. She's the national statistician of the Philippines. The second presenter is going to be Albina Chihuahua, and she is the Director General of Tanzania National Bureau of Statistics. The third presenter is going to be Carlos Mendez. He's the Technical Coordinator, the Director of the Department of Methodology and Information Systems of the National Statistical Institute of Cabo Verde. And the fourth presenter is someone nobody knows about, is Stefan Schweinfest, our famous Swan, who's the director of the UN Statistical Division and our great host. Somebody left their phone here. It must be. Oh my God, this is Hans Rosling calling.
Perhaps he wants also to engage.
Oh, so I'm going to just, sorry, this is, somebody should tell Ola that he left the phone there, so Hans was calling him. Okay, so can we start, Lisa? Sorry, Hans interrupted us. So Lisa, you will have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shada. There are 5 building blocks of capacity development for data that is being discussed here. But I would like to focus on the second one, which is fostering strong institutions and high-quality data processes. I would like to think that capacity development should really be able to produce this strong institutions. Because for me, if we have strong institutions, whoever is the chief statistician or whoever are there, just the institutions will be able to continue doing what it's supposed to do. So what works? In the Philippines, what we grabbed as opportunity was the Philippine Statistics Law that was signed in 2013. And because of that law, we went to the Planning and Budget Ministry and said, the law was created to have a better statistical system, and to have a better statistical system, please provide us the appropriate budget. So what works? Take advantage of whatever laws that are now being signed in the country to ask for more support. Identify champions that will help the statistical system and the statistics office get the proper resources. So in the case of the Philippines, it was our planning minister and budget minister. The challenge we faced is this, that even when we got the support of the champions, our people, our structure was not yet ready. So there was a problem of absorptive capacity. So we had the budget, but we were not able to really optimize the use of it. And I realized that we need to include in capacity development not just the statisticians and the IT people, but also the human resource people, the budget people, the accounting people, the general services people. So what needs to be done? We should change mindset, and I'm always looking at the transformative agenda of official statistics, and have a clear capacity building framework, institution, divisions, people, and teach leaders to identify what should be revolutionary and what should be evolutionary, how to think fast, but also how to think slow. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks. Did she meet the 5 minutes? Oh my goodness, amazing. Okay, setting a very good example. Alvina, 5 minutes. You can do it also from there.
I think so. I can do from there.
No, that's better. Yeah, now that you're here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me start very quickly. Capacity building is a continuous process, and especially in our offices because of emerging issues, just like right now we are seeing SDGs 2030, and in Africa we have this Agenda 2063 and our national frameworks. To me, and what really we are applying in Tanzania, capacity building, which we think is the way to modernize more my office and the other institutions. One, we are taking capacity building in terms of human capacity, in terms of imparting more training and specific trainings. And for the leadership, like myself, I'm standing here, it's about the leadership and management, because capacity building without having a strong leadership within the National Statistics Office or any institutions, I don't think that we will do justice for modernization of our institution that we want to see in coming 15 or 60 years, retention of the capacity and incentives and so forth. The second is on resource capacity in terms of funding that we do tap from the private sector, civil organization, and so on. The idea behind is to bring them the partnership between, so that we don't rely, statistics or data is the public goods, as we have been saying, so every person, every institution has to participate in one way or another. What really we do, what works in Tanzania really, is the coordination part of it. and coordination through cooperation and communication. And I normally apply 3 C's. That is coordination, cooperation, and communication. And also integration, innovation, technology, and so forth. And working closely with data scientists. That really we are looking for in Tanzania, how best we can do through strengthening our routine data system, through the capacity, where we normally gain from the data scientists. And also in Tanzania, we have NSDS. We do work around a national strategy for development of statistics that we think this is the proper way of capacitating the staff, capacitating all the producers and the users of statistics or data in the system. So challenges, as we have pointed out, and we are keeping on working on it, is this weak governance. Autonomy, professional autonomy, which may jeopardize the capacity building that somebody wants to build on, the leadership and so forth, and the lack of transparency, trust among the partners, and sometimes capacity building that is demand-driven. It has to come from the national ownership, I normally say this, and lack of sound strategy may lead to not modernizing our offices. Thanks so much. I don't know whether I've exceeded 5 minutes. Thank you.
You did it, Albina. Actually, it was under 5 minutes, right? Okay. So, Carlos, you're under a lot of pressure because the 2 ladies before you have done it under 5 minutes, and you have to do it now. And you, would you like to speak English, French, or a mix of 2? I think between the audience, Carlos has done an amazing job of translating his slides to English. So, really thank you. So if you want to do a mix, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Shaida. I will try to speak English. I take a few minutes to excuse from my English, more English. So we begin. Our plan, we'll talk about some information about Cape Verde, some information, institutional information, our initiative, innovation in terms of methodology, dissemination of data, security and data quality, and some perspective and challenge. Cape Verde is a small country, near to Dakar, Senegal. In terms of indicators, we have unemployment to 12%, literacy around 87%, and another information you can see. We have a current structure of ENS, a macrostructure adapted to standard modern statistics. We take a focus on 3 pillars: management, production, and development, with transparency and documentation and modern technology platform. Transparency and documentation, very, very important aspect from the Institute of Statistics. We have some problem about methodology harmonization. Our vision, we constate that we have the production with independent methodology, similar question and variable formulated differently. We have a risk to collecting data that are already produced, so we need to systematize and optimize processes and procedures. Our vision, we need to converging our methodology in implementing about handbook, code standard, code, practice, and African chart of statistics, institutional strengthening and political gooding, strengthening technical capacity, management framework, transparency and documentation processes. So in middle, we have harmonization of processes. Then we are now implementing the survey management system. Very, very important. We have to converge our processes in this platform with generic process model. Dissemination. We have we have reformed our website. We focus on SDGs. Our data center security, we have central statistical research laboratory. So we are open to open data, but we have the risk about anonymization and confidentiality. We have geodata portal for georeferencing our study. Perspective and challenge, we are promotion the statistical culture, promotion institutional cooperation, synergy, strong and technical coordination. We have with a platform, a national platform, so the reform use the statistics from administration source. Perspective, yeah, it's this perspective that I speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carlos. Well done. Johannes was just telling me, what were you telling me about Cape Verde, Johannes?
No, I just wanted to say really thank you, because he was translating the presentation from French into English, and I think it came very clearly across, so thank you so much. And I also wanted to say one of my first missions in this position was to Capo Verde, to go to a regional conference about sort of more new, modern forms of data collection, the CAPI system and so on, that was organized in your country. And Capo Verde is certainly one of the leading countries in promoting innovation. So again, thank you so much for sharing your expertise about this topic. Now we move on and have Stefan Schweinfest. Stefan, can we change a little bit the program, and can I push you a little bit, put you on the spot with one question? If you don't mind, but you probably have also prepared some remarks. But one question that just came to my mind is, we are looking into, the whole session is also the link to the plenary session that we had, where we kicked off this thread. The thread is named New Approaches to Capacity Development. And the whole idea is, we need new approaches. We all need new approaches. Also, Paris 21 needs new approaches to do a better job. Now, if I would put you on the spot and ask you, does UNSD need new approaches to relate to this more modern forms of data revolution, SDGs? How do you think for yourself and for your own team and for UNSD? Is there something that comes to mind, one or two things, how you think you will be changing?
Actually, you can have 6 minutes because of that.
Yeah, and I will have to get back to you, to Johannes for doing this. No, but I'm not afraid. Isn't this something new that we've just been doing? And I think this is a testimony that we have heard the message loud and clear that, as I said in the opening panel, we need friends and partners to work with, and the outreach needs to be done at all levels, not only from my office making phone calls and talking to new stakeholders, but creating a platform where everybody at all levels, national, international level, can relate to each other. So I think this is one fundamentally new threat with D, not threat, with T, of our work. I think this is something new that wasn't done before. I don't think my predecessors have ever met so many people who were not on a government salary. And so I think this is important. And one other thing I think where I am thinking of changing our focus is more, and this was going to be one of my remarks, so I'm segueing into my own messages, is that we need to put more emphasis on statistical management and organization, and the fundamentals of statistics, not so much the issues. So let me go to what I had sort of prepared. When I run around New York these days, I mean, people, they always call me Mr. Indicator, and at one point I thought this is nice, that I'm recognized, but now I'm sick and tired of the title Mr. Indicator, and my job, my new ambition is to become Mr. Capacity. So this fits very well with this topic, because I think this is what we really need to focus on in the implementation kind of context. And I have three messages. Number one, capacity is tremendously important. I think capacity is even more important than data. Second message, we need to focus more on management and organization. And third message is the Statistical Commission has to be at the center, trying to coordinate the overall capacity efforts, and the Global Action Plan, if you haven't read it, is exactly the tool for it, so please read it. So let me go back to my three messages. Number one, capacity is important. And I mean, when I say it's more important than data, I don't really mean it. I just wanted to get your attention. But I mean, there is sometimes there is a dilemma, and we need to be very aware of it, because I mean, when we focus too much on data, there is a danger that some people may want to harvest and grab data from all kinds of trees, and not go through the more tedious process of building national capacity. And that is, I think, a dangerous development. And I think we really need to make the commitment that data have to be the result of national capacity, national ownership. We need to put the countries into the driving seats, and this is for me very important. Second point, I mean, there are all these dimensions of capacity, financial capacity, human technical capacity, and institutional capacity. And I've seen it in 27 years of work in the international statistical arena. The most important is organization, management, the framework, the statistical systems. We have built so many capacities in different projects in different countries in specialized technical areas. It will only stand the test of time if it's part of a very solid framework. So in my office, we have published a handbook on organization and management in 2003. This is hopelessly outdated. So one of my priority areas for the near future is to update this handbook on management and organization and take into account issues of legislation, statistical leadership, outreach, communication, data ecosystems, definition of what is the new system, et cetera, and I think that's the most important thing. And we want to accompany this by a website of good practices where countries can describe what they have done and we can learn from each other. So that's my second big point. My third point is when there was this question, how are we doing this and how are we keeping coordinated and in touch with each other? The Global Action Plan is, in my view, that tool where we can all sign up for the various dimensions of capacity. And if you read the Global Action Plan, it actually talks about all of these issues, institutional dissemination, etc., partnerships, and so, which are, in my view, facets of capacity. So if you haven't read the Global Action Plan, please do so. And because this will be, together with our programs on a transformative agenda and the regional action plans, that will be the implementation extension of the more conceptual global action plan. This will be our blueprint for moving forward in terms of building capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to all the speakers so far. Johannes asked me, and I do what Johannes tells me, to summarize a little bit of where we are with the presentations. I think this flag is on my way. Sorry, UN flag. Maybe summarize what we've heard so far from Lisa, Albina, Carlos, and of course from Stefan. Excellent points that we've heard, but I want to highlight a few things and sort of a framework that's coming out from these discussions. You know, from Lisa, building on a government-wide efforts is tremendously important. I really like mentioning that you've gone over budget and finding champions in different parts of the system. I really appreciate that you talk about staff, that compensation for staff and paying attention to staff, and of course going to Albina, building institutions, you know, also paying attention to human resources and of course the financial resources. Using NSDS for us as a guideline for going with countries, but expanding it to NSS, to National Statistical System, is a great idea from you, Albina. And of course, more inclusive strategic planning by bringing other groups together to make it into a national statistical system. From Carlos, we heard a lot from the importance of the management, transparency, IT platforms, and innovation, and of course, reaching out to data and data users and data dissemination. And from Mr. Capacity, I'm so glad to hear that from indicators we move into capacity. I really, really appreciate that, because I think for us to have better data and sustainable development data, we really need capacity. So that's really good to put that emphasis. And many of us have been very pleased to see the coverage of that topic in the Global Action Plan. So for Global Action Plan to become an organizing framework for this work going forward is tremendously important. So I see that we're coming out with 3 blocks for going with this new paradigm. One is that looking fresh at some of the planning tools and planning side of what we are trying to do. The middle part, which is very important, and all of you said, and Stefan particularly emphasized, is building institution and building management and organization. And all those connectivity and innovations, I think, is also in that middle part. And then the third block that I see coming out is the attention and engagement with users and dissemination and open data. I really liked all the challenges that you put in front of us, and I think we should, as we go ahead, we should keep these 2 lists as opportunities and what we are guiding us to move, but also what are the challenges? What is that checklist of things that we have to get done as we go through? So that was my summary. Johannes, are you happy with me? Thank you. Phew. So now we move to the second block of our wonderful presenters. And in this second group, we're going to start with Oliver. And Oliver Cincani is from Oliver, you have a very fancy title. So I know you for I don't know how many years, but Oliver is the director of the African Center for Statistics at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And then we move to Rachel Bevan, who is the senior statistician and data revolution lead for the data for development team at the FID. And then we move to Ruth, which I'm so grateful for Ruth to be here, Ruth Levine, and being among us, among this bunch. Ruth Levine, who's the program director of global development and population at the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. And then we're going to end with least but not last, with our colleague, and which we all have highest respect for, Julio Santella, who is the president of the National Institute of Statistics and Geography of Mexico. So over to you, Oliver. Your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Shaida. Let me start by where Stefan ended in terms of what needs to be done, and maybe look at approaches to capacity building in the areas that is pointed out. I think that going forward, really, we should be talking about capacity building by, first of all, looking at predefined activities in an area that we want to deal with. That, first of all, we define what exactly needs to be done and agree with the countries that this is what needs to be done. But before then, we also need to actually make an assessment, because we know that countries are at a different level of development in terms of capacity, statistical capacity, and therefore we need to also take into account that the difference in the way they are doing things, so that countries should then be put in some kind of segments according to their level of capacity, so that once that is done, and you agree on the activity that needs to be done, agree or have a commitment to specific results from the beginning. What is it exactly that you want to achieve in that particular area? So if you're talking about management of statistical offices, or indeed leadership, what do you want to achieve there? So from the beginning, you have a cohort or a group of heads of national statistical offices with clear understanding what needs to be done over the period. And then if we do it that way, you'll be able to manage results, because you have a smaller group that you're going to be working with over the period of time until you reach your goal. And I think because you've already have identified the results, it makes it very easy for you to really identify what needs to be achieved over a period of time. The beauty about that kind of approach is, first of all, it's result-oriented. It's cost-effective because you have already agreed to what needs to be done. It supports ownership because everyone has agreed to what needs to be done over a period of time to whatever activity. If it could be indeed an activity within, say, SDGs that we need to, or countries need to achieve or the particular activity, you will have agreed on that. And then the other bit about it is that the capacity itself is well absorbed because the ownership that countries or whoever is participating here has committed to, they tend to own the process and therefore, with clear results. And I think finally what we actually see from that kind of situation is a well-sustained capacity development because you have agreed from the beginning how long the program or activity is going to be undertaken and by what forms, what kind of resources that have been identified to be able to deliver on that. And finally is because you have a number of countries participating in a particular activity, there's what I would call a peer factor effect. If you're seeing one of your colleagues within the group moving in a certain direction, you also want to move there. What if country X is doing this way, why can't I do it the same way? So there is that peer factor that could be embedded in the program. I thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. So going to Rachel. You have a slide, Rachel?
Hello, thank you. I've just got one slide, but I can talk anyway if it doesn't come up. Okay, that's the one. So in terms of, I'll just kind of go straight into it, what's worked. We think that DFID's been involved in statistics capacity building now in various countries for at least 15 years, and we're one of the largest bilateral donors. So we have been doing a lot of work. And a lot of what I'm saying is actually based on a study that we did, I think, 2 years ago. And then some personal reflections as well. So in terms of what's worked, aligning with countries' own national statistical strategies is clearly a key part of making sure that there is country ownership for what we're doing. For example, the work which we've been doing in Tanzania is very much part of that. Also, basket funding has helped to also improve coordination and bring donors together, but also bringing us together with governments as well. And we've been doing that particularly with the World Bank through the Statistics for Results facility. Long-term financing, we think, does make a difference, so we do try to kind of do that as much as we can. So, for example, in Uganda, where I think we've been providing funding for statistics for 15 years. Also, another kind of thing I think that has made a difference is being opportunistic. So there's oftentimes a change in government, or there can be a change in the head of a national statistical institution, and that actually can provide an opportunity that we might not have had previously. So being able to kind of react quickly does help. And then finally, in terms of what's worked, we also think having a donor statistician actually in country and working really closely with the national statistics officers as well has been critical in terms of making a success. Particularly, and one example of that's Afghanistan, where I think we've had a donor statistician for 5 years, although not the same person. In terms of the challenges, some of the challenges, the old things persist. So there is still a kind of lack of funding for statistics, but also linked to that, we still need to get more political buy-in as well. If we can get more political buy-in, then people will prioritize statistics. The new indicators, as we know, the new SDG framework presents a lot of challenges. New technologies both create opportunities, but also a challenge as well. And the challenge is to make sure that we don't forget that you actually still need to do some of the basic building blocks in terms of building a statistical system, making sure that we get the basics in place. There's a challenge as well in terms of new skills that we need to actually use these new technologies on a personal level. That's quite challenging when you kind of hear all these new things that are going on and you actually think you have to kind of keep on upgrading your skills all the time, but the massive opportunity there. In terms of the final challenge, then new funding, it's probably we're not going to be able to get the same funding from the existing kind of range of partners, so we're going to have to look for new partnerships as part of that. So in DFID, we are looking at how our approach will change. As you heard earlier from John Pullinger in the plenary, we've made a commitment in DFID at the political level that we are completely committed to meeting the SDGs, but we're also committed to leaving no one behind. And that means that every single person counts. And we know that we've got to do more on that. So one thing that we've done is we've actually launched a data disaggregation plan which sets out what we're going to do in terms of disaggregating all our data by disability, sex, age and geography. We're also looking at providing more support on administrative data systems and vital registration, which we think are really key building blocks to actually improving that agenda. And then, as we said before, we're going to need to work with new partners on this. So we're already kind of setting up a partnership with the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. We're also looking at what other partners we can work with, and particularly looking at doing more with the UK Office for National Statistics. But underpinning the whole of our new approach as well, we also recognise that actually we also need to do more political economy analysis to actually understand the context in which we're working, so that we can make sure that the support that we're giving, it's not just about getting the statistics right, it's looking at the whole kind of political situation as well, making sure that we understand the country context in which we're working. And together we hope that that's going to make sure that our support is as effective as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks. So important to hear from you from the donor's perspective, and of course, hearing our next speaker from Ruth.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate being here because I actually am in no way an expert, as others are here, on capacity development. What I can speak to is what funders think about when they consider whether to and how much to invest in capacity development. So I'll offer a few reflections on that because everything that has been talked about here costs money. It's worth remembering that most of the money for statistical capacity development is or could be marshaled at the country level, either from donors who are making decisions within individual countries or, much more importantly, from national governments. So what triggers investment in statistical capacity development, and what could trigger more investment in that essential set of functions? I think that there needs to be greater demonstration of a return on that investment, of value extracted from the significant sums that could easily be absorbed by capacity development. So what does that mean, extracting value? Well, I think it means that national statistics offices need to focus to some extent on use. They need to focus on ensuring that the data collected, curated, reported, made available are responsive to users' needs and fully exploited. And those are related but separate agendas. So on the ensuring that the data are responsive to users, I have a few suggestions, hopefully opening a conversation about this. And none of these are themselves very expensive to undertake. So first and most important is to build relationships and consult in a systematic way with users. And I know that that is often done. I think it could probably be enhanced, and that there are vehicles such as the data roadmaps that the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data are working on at the country level, and I'm sure there are other initiatives as well. I think it's crucial that national statistics offices engage with policymakers to some extent in the way that some international donors, the World Bank and others, themselves engage and shape data-related projects around an understanding of the policy needs at the country level. So I think it's important to kind of disintermediate, I'll use that word, and have a direct conversation between the national statistics offices and the potential policy users in country. I'll turn now to the challenge of ensuring that the data, once collected, once curated, are in fact fully exploited. So here are just a few thoughts of things that I've observed and I'm sure are underway in a number of countries and could expand. One is to develop, either host or establish a partnership for others to host user groups for particular data products. So that would connect the technical staff that are most knowledgeable about how the data were collected with users, whether they're academic researchers, other government agencies, or even researchers in in the private sector doing work for commercial interests. Having an active user group around, say, longitudinal data sets that are quite complex to understand can really help extract key value and also give feedback to the statistical offices about the quality of the data and what more could be added, new modules and so forth. Certainly opening up data and taking advantage of existing platforms to share data, I think is a crucial way to ensure maximum use. And I think that there are other things that one might do. For example, you can create a data use competition. It sounds like a little bit of a gimmick, but I've seen this really stimulate impressive attention to data resources. When you say, you know, we'll give a prize to the group that does the best job at mashing up different kinds of data sources. There's an exciting project that Data2X, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and the Web Foundation were involved in Côte d'Ivoire that did precisely that. And when you see young people getting excited about using national statistics and other information, that's a good day for the National Statistics Office. So I'll close there and just say, when you think about capacity development, I am sure your mind instantly goes to, where am I going to get the resources to do this important work? And when your mind goes to where am I going to get the resources, your mind should then go to, how am I going to make sure that the value is extracted from the work that we do?
Thanks, Ruth, and thanks for reminding us for the value and also recognizing that this all will cost, and really particularly appreciate some of the suggestions for how we can operationalize and stabilize this user engagement. So that's terrific. So Julio, we kept you for last because I've seen your amazing presentation. So you have 5 minutes to deliver it, but if you want to go maybe 1 minute over it, because Julio has a difficult task, because we wanted him to also emphasize for us how important it is to link a statistical system with geoinformation systems. And as you know, Mexico is one of our heroes in doing that. So if you could get us on that right track, we'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Shaida. I mean, thank you for all your gentle words, and thank you for the invitation of sharing this. I think my message is going to come very well right after very brilliant presenters before me. Let me just start with describing the wood, and then I'll talk about the tree and one specific example about capacity building that we do. First, a little context. All national statistical offices have to transform themselves in order to face the data revolution and access and satisfy all demands coming out of the spectacle. I mean, that it's a completely different, more of the artistic type, less of a number crunching, and try to do a better job in that respect. Now, with that context, in Mexico, we just released a new agenda for the national statistical system. That what is built upon a 24-year horizon. So we have a new vision for the 2040 year, where our vision is pretty much related to what Ruth was saying, that we want our information coming out of the system to be relevant for the decision-making of policy in our country. So in our system, we have different objectives surrounding the different government agencies and our own office. And one of the objectives, strategic objectives that I want to emphasize has to do precisely with capacity building. I mean, we recognize that within our country, the National Statistical Office has to take the leadership of capacity building of other government entities in order to expand statistical literacy and expand the way to actually produce statistical information and use statistical information properly. So our own strategic objective around capacity building is very similar to what you have seen in other places, such as this fora. strengthening technical and capacities, establishing a strategic alliance, and innovating methods and techniques. So that's the forest through which I would like to put an example of capacity building that INEGI, as the National Statistical Office and Geographical Office, has to do in terms of our users. And by users, I mean both at the public sector level and the private sector level. So in Mexico, we have a platform, an open-based platform, a geographic information system that we call Digital Map of Mexico. And our capacity building exercise is trying to provide expertise and try to educate all our users into this platform. So on a regular basis, we provide training on different sectors on how to use this freely and publicly available tool. I mean, this tool is available from our website. What kind of things do we have in this digital map of Mexico? We have more than 200 vector data layers. Some of these vector layers are statistical information that can be overlapped within this GIS system in order to enrich decision-making. So we have information such as hydraulic information, the shape of the terrain, land transportation, location of economic establishments and house dwellings, a lot of environment information and even satellite images that can be used for decision making. Now, part of this training is, and I would like to say, is also being now implemented abroad. It's part of South-South cooperation. So within UNGGIM Americas, we're also trying to expand this type of technology within the Caribbean area and trying to get a common standard of understanding and use the same similar tools in order that our neighbors and friends basically have the same kind of information. So this capacity building is important so that no one in the region is left behind. What are the challenges in this arena? Is that first that geographic information systems become an everyday tool for the statistical community. So that's one important challenge that we identify. One other challenge is that we promote within our own country this digital map or this tool as a standard and basic tool, because there's a lot of competition in the market. And for us, it's important that our own tool becomes the most popular one, that they use this instrument that it's free of use and of open source type of thing, instead of purchasing public or using public sector money in the purchase of other systems that obviously can also provide a lot of things. And also, as a National Statistical and Geographic Office, we have to become a talent hub for the development of human and technical capacities that we can later on share with our own user community. And I would stop at that point.
Thank you. Thanks, Julio. So before we move into the second part of our meeting and session and handing it over to Johannes for doing another summary so that you can provide inputs to us, I wanted to ask and recognize Linda in the crowd from ESRI, and so give you the floor for, do you have a microphone, or I give you one here? And ESRI has had a very critical role, of course, in the work that we were just hearing and the integration of geographic information system into national statistical system. And maybe just a few minutes of, start with introducing yourself. Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much. Hey, everyone, Linda Peters with ESRI. Thank you to the panel. I thought that was really fascinating, and I have a couple of questions. for the panelists. One for Carlos. There was a lot of talk on capacity development overall, and I wondered if you could speak to what you did in Cabo Verde to best prepare your team to adopt some of the new technologies, the GIS apps and the platform. I think that would be valuable for others to understand what you had to do to make it that successful. And a similar type of question for Hanegi. You've done a great job in getting things out there and getting engaged with the users, like we heard Ruth talk about. But I wonder if you can give us a little bit more on how you get other government agencies to engage and start using that platform, and what you're doing. Are you doing marketing activities? How are you reaching out to the community to bring them in? That would be really helpful for us to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Johannes, I'm going to turn it to you. You're going to do a summary of where we are and then turn it into dialogue with the audience.
So what we suggest to do, so we are, first of all, thank you so much for staying to the 5 minutes. It's amazing. We still have, if I see these blinking numbers here, half an hour time for discussion and get your feedback. It's really like a brainstorming session. What we want to get out of it is basically, at the end of this session, I will show you in a minute 2 slides. The first one is already up. But in particular on the second slide is building blocks, how we can shape this new form of capacity development going forward. What would be the key elements? And I will, based on the discussions we had here, based on the plenary session and based on our own thinking, we'll make a few proposals and then have you reacting to it, but you can also, as Linda, ask a pertinent question. So we will also give the panelists at the end 1 minute, from 5, unfortunately, to only 1.5, to share with us your final thoughts, and then we will start from Julio from the end. So Julio can also, you are not that time the last speaker, so we're trying to balance this out too. So what I wanted to do very quickly, trying to synthesize from all these fantastic ideas, what we have heard so far into in a very stylized way, and it's not black and white, but thinking a little bit about this new paradigm that we are possibly seeing coming up. So if I may label a traditional approach to capacity development, something like very often driven by bilateral approaches, very often driven by the supply side, by the production side, and limited to the core of the national statistical system, while, as we have heard, the world gets much more complex. It's focused very much, and we heard it a couple of times, on innovation, and definitely a multi-stakeholder framework is coming up. So that's sort of in a general way. More specifically, often capacity building efforts from multilateral organizations and from bilateral organizations have focused a lot on technical aspects, helping national statistical offices in doing better surveys, data curation. I think what we have heard is from many speakers, and I think particularly Lisa mentioned something like changing the mindset of her own staff, of the whole system, and of the stakeholders. So the integration of something like the ability to build new partnerships, soft skills are important, like leadership, change management, and advocacy. So there's clearly a shift from a more technical to a more broader form of capacity. I already mentioned the supply side. Here I just wanted to add the focus on the right format of data. The focus has been set by many speakers on the data user side and the impact of data. So I think from churning the data out, producing books, to producing data that has an impact and where you can tell a story with, which requires a certain different technique. I mean, you have to have people in your office that can tell those stories and relate with the broader public. A third point could be something like, we have been talking very much in the past about the national statistical system. Now we have to integrate broader system, use the non-official data sources, engage with them, strengthening user group to consume and disseminate, and of course the emerging topic of data literacy. I think it came, for those of you who had the chance to be here this morning, which I found a very fascinating session, about the questioning a little bit. Is it only about more data production, or is it sort of also relating to those data, and will only data drive decisions, or will be other things? So I found that very interesting, and that directly leads to the data literacy question. And last but not least, an issue that hasn't come up naturally here, and I think that's something we need to be better at, building bridges to the aid and development cooperation discussion. And often we are only sticking with our own crowds. And here clearly, I mean, from the ODA funding, the ODA funding is low, we know. Very little results-based issues in our field. And it's very scattered, often focusing on certain sectors. The health sector often has a very good ability to raise funds. But on other sectors, if you look for agriculture, for instance, since a very long time, agriculture was completely neglected, and only since very few years this has changed. So just to wrap that up, there is a sort of capacity development narrative for data producers that needs to change, for data users, and for donors. And if I can have the second slide, if somebody can press the button. Yeah, so this is just this is brainstorming on the maybe 5 points. What could be key elements of this new paradigm? Well, we called it initially, and we may stick to it, Capacity Development 4.0, which makes the link to Industrial 4.0. What is the Industrial 4.0 is when the machines start to talk to each other, when the sensors, if you wake up and the alarm clock links that the coffee machine starts to run. So the main idea would be, the link here would be that all these different things that I've put down here would relate to each other. It's not only one thing, but they have to sort of cross-communicate to each other. So what are these 5 things? The first one is clearly, has been said, increasing the demand side use and impact of data. Secondly, we can't repeat it often enough, use country systems. Please go with this new framework, not only talk about it, but I hope that the donors would more also walk their talk and use more country systems for donor support. The issue about effective institutions and governance structures, we have heard about this, and also the link to the independency of the national statistical system is very important. Another building block, partnerships. So many different partnerships, but we have to learn how to build partnerships. Sometimes we equate solution with partnership. Yeah, just build another public partnership. But as we know from the development literature on public-private partnerships in health, sewage, education, it's very complicated because the incentives are very different between the private sector, the public sector, and others. So how can we align those incentives? In particular, if you look at the mobile phone use of data, the sharing, the incentives of a private company to share the data might not be aligned with the incentives of the NSO to get those data. So these are a few thoughts we need to think further. And last but not least, I mentioned this changing of narrative for the donors and how we can do this. So I stop here, and we open now for questions, comments, ideas, your ideas of how we can further develop these building blocks of capacity development 4.0. And I already have a gentleman over there, so if you can have the mics.
Hi, my name is Scott. I'm with PwC Public Sector based in DC. I have a question related to capacity development that I've kind of heard a theme related to in everything you've talked about, specifically for the NSOs, but I guess also for those on the stage that work with NSOs across the globe. I'm curious if an NSO is interested in implementing what some of you mentioned, to have a dramatic transformation of how it operates to meet the challenges of the data revolution and the SDGs. Where can they go for help? Is there a common or a place that they can go to ask for help related to that? And related also, you know, I've also heard from many people, many NSOs, that funding is limited, very limited in many cases. In terms of funding to support that kind of transformation, where could they go? So both on the actual implementation of the processes of transformation, as well as the money to fund it, where could NSOs go for help?
Great question. The gentleman just in the, and then I see, okay. Maybe we start, yeah, that's a good.
Hello, I am from NSO Latvia, and I have a question related to your question, which is, what's the role of these kind of a regional or international organizations like European Union? And if this is a place where national statistical institutes can go for help, also considering that they are very reluctant to raise any more funding for statistics, although they are also very interested in capacity development. Thank you.
Very good question. Maybe Stefan, would you later be able to, and Oliver, thank you. The lady.
Thank you. I'm from the Global Partnership, and I would like to ask from Inegi, you started from the Geospatial.
Can you just introduce, speak a little bit louder?
Louder, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask from Inegi, you started from the Geospatial data, your collaboration with the other government agency, and what other topics are you considering for the next stage and sectors would you like to tackle?
So I suggest we take this gentleman, and then there's the gentleman very much in the back, and then we give the panelists a chance to answer, and then I come back.
Yeah, my name is Abdullah Hassan Kamara from the National Statistics Office, Sierra Leone. I'm looking at capacity development, looking at measuring it as in the plenary this morning. Like for us, most countries in Africa, you want to understand that, I mean, we do more of on-the-job capacity building. And we have technical advisors sent by donors to advise and again provide capacity development measures whilst we are implementing our projects like a census service. So like what I'm looking at here is who measures the capacity being transferred to the local staff from the technical advisors. Of course, governments do that, but from the NGO side, the UN side, is there any form of measuring whether there is capacity being built when these projects are implemented? Because this is key, and if that is being done, how is it being done? That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. There is a gentleman who has been asking for an intervention since a very long time. Could you, what is the lady? I can't see because the light is, oh, that's a lady, sorry. Peter, can you, because she was asking for, sorry.
Thank you very much. My name is Malebogo Kerekang. I'm from Statistics Botswana. I just wanted to, maybe the panelists to share a bit of light when it comes to the opening up of the data versus cost recovery measures. I'm saying this because in most cases you'll find that as national statistical offices, some are struggling, and we'll find that the cost of collecting and processing and availing the data is quite on the high side. We are talking of opening up of the data, which is really something that as statisticians we also do support. But we have to try and strike a balance when it comes to the opening up of the data, making the utilization of the data very high versus cost recovery measures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we had a couple of interesting questions. I would suggest we give now the floor and we take a second round if you don't mind, because otherwise it gets maybe difficult for you to follow. So we had questions about opening up, just the question, and the measuring on capacity, the European Union, I don't know, and then there was the very specific question to Julio from Linda. Maybe we can start with Linda's question, and then I would just suggest you pick the questions and self-select into answers.
Let me address the couple of questions that were sent to us. We engage with our own users at different levels. Depends on the type of users that we're facing. For public sector users, our government agencies, of course, we are within the national statistical system. There's a natural dialogue where we basically try to find out the policy needs and provide the data that these users are demanding. Then we have the academic users, where we have different type of dialogues, different universe, and we try to engage in different types of data provision. For instance, for this community, it's very important to have a lab of microdata with all the procedures to access that information. So that's part of the opening up of our information, but preserving the confidentiality of our informants. And at the final level, it's the everyday, the common citizen type of user. And in that respect, we do have a sales force. I mean, we go across the country selling for no price, selling for free our information So we have a sales force of around 200 people that are in our regional offices trying to figure out all the different needs. And it can be from elementary school to certain private sector different needs. And that's part of our strategy.
Well, that's a very, very interesting example. So thanks for sharing this. There was a second question from Linda, I think directly addressed to, who was that? I forgot. To Carlos. Was it Carlos? Or?
You need to translate.
If we can try. So otherwise, I mean, if it's too complicated now with the, okay. Now, so I suggest as we handle that question then bilaterally. So sorry for that. Stefan, would you like to move on with that question from the European Union and maybe other questions that you were, the regional?
Yeah. Okay. Perhaps three I heard. Where can NSOs go? And it depends on what kind of support you need. I mean, if you want financial support, well, there's the international donor community. There's the UN system, UNFPA, UNDP, and so. But if you need technical support, you can come to our office. I will not be able to send you a check, but I mean, when it comes to technical advice on how to set up the next census and so on, implement census recommendation international, that's our job. So just to clarify that. I'm not sure I entirely understood the question about the union. I mean, what is the role of regional organizations or regional?
No, it was more the question, how can one get money from an organization? I think I understood it more that EU should fund more for data and statistics, and how can one sort of help that EU would spend also on data and capacity? That I think was more the question.
Well, that's of course, I mean, I can't answer that question. I'm not speaking for the EU. But I think regional organizations, this is how I understood the question, have to play a very critical role. I mean, I believe very much in regional and sub-regional cooperation because, I mean, I think when we from the UNSD run a workshop somewhere, I mean, this is a short-term event. I mean, the most important outcome of a workshop for me is always that the countries are talking to each other afterwards, that whatever the colleague from Myanmar calls the colleague on Laos and says, how did you do this with that survey? And so I think capacity also, it's not only capacity building and once or unique transfer, it's then also the transfer management and so on. And I think that's a very important point we need to highlight. And there was one interesting question on who measures the capacity transfer, and I think that's very, very important question. I think we're not doing nearly enough of it because, I mean, we have now a long history of capacity efforts, and some of them were, I mean, we started the question, I mean, the discussion was that some of them were successful and others were not, or were only successful in the short run, but not in the long run. So I think we need a lot more, and here I appeal to people in the research community, if there are people here who are looking for research projects, I'd be very happy to work with you to look at the history of certain projects and identify which are the elements of successful cooperation. I mean, because this is really critical. We have a lot of challenges there. How do we measure capacity and so on and so forth? But it is critically important also in the spirit of accountability that was several times mentioned here. I mean, there's a lot of money sometimes involved, and donors rightly ask the question, what's come out of it in the end? So I think this is an area where we collectively need to do a lot more to measure our own performance and capacity building.
If I can just add on this, because I think it's really crucially important, there is obviously different agencies have different forms and ways of, we just showed to you the World Bank's, it's an aggregated indicator how to measure capacity. Then the European Union, the Eurostat has their snapshot tool, and there are a few other tools from the Inter-American Development Bank. So we are currently at Paris 21 trying to see the different frameworks that are out there and try to see a little bit what are the strengths and how the weaknesses, I wouldn't say, but what are for which purpose you can do what kind of either self-assessment or peer review assessment. The question related to this is also about open assessment frameworks. So opening up those questions asked to national statistical offices, because sometimes you get similar questions from different organizations or from that might be just replicating each other. So opening up and having an open assessment framework for the questions might be interesting, and we would be having our Paris 21 seminar at UNSC about open assessment framework. So that's, I think, another nice opportunity to follow this up. Albina, do you want to come in? There were a few other questions.
Yeah, really, in terms of the technical assistance impact, in Tanzania, we normally do the assessment. For instance, economic statistics, where we do really face a lot of problems, and whereby the IMF, they tend to put as many technical assistance as possible. So what we normally do is very quickly to do the assessment and say, really, this technical assistance from consultant A, we don't need it because based on the assessment, there is this kind of weaknesses that has to be addressed. So we normally do. Let me, because I'm from the National Statistics Office, where do we go in terms of data revolutions and so on? In fact, in our offices, we normally have a plan. We know in this financial year, there is capacity that we need. So what quickly we normally do is to do some sort of mapping. Who international donor can come and assist us on this? First, we have to look at South-South cooperation. If I can get somebody from Kenya, why should I go for UNFPA? Why should I go to somebody? So we normally have this plan in our offices, sitting with us and sitting with our partners and see which partner can work on what. So this is really what we normally do. We don't sit like in a vacuum, we don't know where to go.
Excellent. Lisa, do you want to?
I would like to share our experience in the Philippines to answer the question on where would NSS go for assistance. So in the Philippines, we take advantage of the fact that we have a good relationship with our universities and researchers. So we have existing interagency committees that meet regularly where we discuss frameworks, definitions, new ways of, new methodologies that should be robust. And so these are members of such interagency committees would include academics as well as the agencies that we engage with in the national statistical system. So these engaging of the NSO with such people on a regular basis opens our minds on how we should be doing better technical methodologies. We also have a dissemination forum of our products where we invite users and we give awards to media partners who are able to give stories about statistics, products and services. So we usually award these media awards every October of the year because every October in the Philippines is National Statistics Month. And so we encourage many activities the whole month for statistics. We also have give awards to our respondents, especially the establishments. When we do establishment survey, sometimes it's difficult to get responses from our establishment respondents, but because of the awards that we give every time we have surveys, we find that there is encouragement to participate, and also they see where their responses go.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy that we get concrete examples for some of those points that we put down here. I mean, you mentioned sort of the awards and media, so engaging with, it's not always so easy, but I think it's a very interesting way, what you suggested in terms of making those points a little bit more concrete. So we have time for 3 very short questions. The gentleman who has the...
Thank you very much. My name is Dabilane. I'm from Statistics, Botswana. Well, there have been indeed a lot of very useful insights in terms of capacity development or capacity building. My first comment or intervention is directed to the Philippines. Very interesting idea regarding the statistical champion. And if I did get you well, you did say the Minister for Planning. And I was just wondering whether, was it the office or the individuals? Because politicians, come and go. And really, And the fiscal development process is a continuous process, and really, the politicians will be coming in. Tomorrow is another one, and the one we are getting tomorrow might not be as enthusiastic as the previous one. My a second comment is with regard to the leadership and management training. I think a number of points are being raised, but my personal and humble feeling is that it's easier said than done. And the reason why I'm saying that is that there are, we're talking of culture change, paradigm issues. Even if I was to attend the leadership and management training, one day I would have a certificate. I just put it aside and continue with the business as usual. So I'm just wondering whether there's any more, example of insight where there's been a serious change of culture, change of paradigm, which has actually helped in terms of leadership and management of the NSO.
Thank you. These are fantastic questions, but we should give the audience also here also an opportunity to answer. Yes. And we are running out of time. And I saw one, I can take, if you don't mind, I take this question from the lady in the right row here. And I think we can then continue the conversation later on. Thank you for your understanding.
Thank you. I'm Celia de Klerk from Statistics South Africa. I have two short contributions. The first one relates to the whole issue of capacity building. I want to link both up with Oliver and with Tanzania. That capacity building is not only about people, but also about other things. However, if I look at your possible building blocks, unless people are included under the third one, I want to propose that it's very explicit as one of the key building blocks. Your whole focus on people capacity building, which focuses then on the leadership, management, strategic thinking, forward thinking, and so on. So that's just the input to your building blocks. I think the other one, and this is where I want to link up with Oliver, is if we go the route of assessment of the capacity and capability of the different countries and what should change, I think that much more emphasis must be placed on not everything will change immediately, that we possibly classify or what type of change that specific country must undergo. Is it transformational? Is it traditional change? Is it transitional change? Because it helps you to understand the outcome you want to achieve. You won't change everything immediately. This data revolution, we need definitely transformational change.
Sorry, we're running out of time, so thank you. We have one more question over here, and then if you can keep it short, really appreciate it. Thanks. This subject requires 3.5 hours.
Okay, well, I think users' side is very important for statistics. So capacity building for me should include users. And I give, for example, very quickly the example of Tunisia, where after the Arab Spring, the NSO was pressured by the civil society, journalism, and so on to open data. And now we have hundreds of data sets which are open. So I think users are key to drive data openness in Africa. However, as we have heard, NSOs are using taxpayers' money, but they are worried of recovering using taxpayers. So is the NSO the right place to go to have this capacity building on the user side? I would like to hear your opinion about that.
Great question. Thank you. So we're going to weave in your questions into closing remarks for maybe 1 minute or less than 1 minute each from our speakers. But keeping in mind, and the question ahead of us is this possible 5 building blocks. So if we can sort of see whether from your talks, whether we are on the right track, we are overshooting, or we are missing something in your remarks, we would really appreciate. If you have a favorite one of these 5 that you want to highlight as priority, So maybe we start back from where we started with Lisa, and we go from there. Johannes, stay with me. Lisa, go.
Thank you, Shada. Yes, I agree with all the building blocks, and as I have said earlier, my favorite really is building the institutions and modernizing the system. So I think it would be the third building block on pursuing effective institutions and governance structures. As regards to the question on champions, the champion is the person, the politician, because they are the ones that could move what you want. And it's actually difficult because you have to build the relationship. But of course, the institution, the office itself is important. But in my experience, it's the person that you have to work with to be your champion.
Very nice. Albina?
Yeah, thank you very much. Mine is just to change the way we NSOs, we do things. This is, we have to, otherwise, I don't know. Let me end there.
Well, very powerful. It's overhaul. Okay, Carlos, any areas that you want to point us to?
Bien, là, je vais parler un peu en français.
Oui, oui.
C'est bien pour moi. En parlant de capacité building, moi, je pense qu'on doit aussi penser à l'utilisation, l'utilisateur, mais on doit s'entendre sur 2 points qu'on a sur notre diapositive, c'est-à-dire la transparence des processus qu'on réalise, qu'on fait, et aussi la documentation. Parce qu'on commence à voir qu'on n'est pas dans le même niveau. Il y a certains qui sont déjà plus avancés, vraiment plus avancés, et d'autres sont vraiment en retard. Alors que les thèmes généraux, on dit qu'on ne doit pas laisser quelqu'un derrière. Donc, d'après moi, ce n'est pas tout à fait ce qu'on voit. Donc, si on commence à faire la documentation de notre processus, on peut apprendre avec vous. Donc, c'est un peu notre réflexion qu'on laisse. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Carlos. So, I think from your emphasis on transparency and openness and from metadata documentation, that's all very much should be embedded in pursuing effective institutions and governance structure, and also maybe throughout, maybe that is sort of an element that runs through all the possible building blocks that we have. So thank you, thanks for that. Stefan, we can't wait to hear from you on this. And any closing remarks you have?
No, I just want to pick up on one remark that Johannes made, and he said leadership is a soft skill. And I know what you mean, but I suddenly realized in that moment that's the problem, that's not true. Leadership is a very hard skill, I mean, if you're trying to lead, and but it's a very critical skill. I think statistical leadership, and somebody asked the questions, I think if I were to run a correlation, I'm just venturing this out, between the most successful jumps and progresses in statistical systems and national systems against the personality of the leaders, the chief statisticians, you would find a very high correlation. So I think from all of this, I'm picking up that reflection. We need more and more efficient leadership in this sector.
Thank you. That's tremendously important, and I think that's another element that runs throughout for change management, for vision, for for managing assets, for managing people, for managing products and engagement with users. All that, or one of the enabling elements of that is leadership. Completely agree. Oliver,
Yeah, very quickly, just 4 points. One, I think in all this the whole process, I think is an issue of simplicity, being realistic, scanning the environment, and the trust and partnership is key in capacity development between the nationals and the development partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Rachel?
I just want to say, in terms of the earlier question, where to go for help, I think it's worth highlighting the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data has kind of developed a range of tools, and it's worth looking there, and they are helping countries on data country roadmaps. In terms of the building blocks, I think for me an area where we could do more is probably the first one, really kind of looking at the demand and use, which I don't think we've probably put quite as much effort into as some of the others.
Terrific. Ruth?
Yeah, thank you so much. I will add my voice to the first one as my favorite because I think so many other good things derive from that. Really promoting the use of data to foster accelerated, better measurement of progress, achievement of the SDGs, and greater social accountability. I think there's an incredible moment to do that as witnessed by the very fact that this conference is happening. And so it's a great moment for national statistics offices to take advantage of that and really, benefit from all the connections that can be made to advance use of quality data.
Thanks. And you will have the last word, will you?
Thank you, Shaida. Just a reflection, when we talk about capacity building, we usually focus on the supply side of capacity, but we have to focus and remember the demand side of capacity. And thinking about the demand, we have to make a contrast between a sponge and a rock. Which of the two absorb more of the liquid? I mean, we can provide a lot of water, but the sponge and the rock will absorb different kinds of capacity. So the point is that we really need that to have a lot of sponges in the demand side that are ready to absorb all the things that we're trying to provide. Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks like you're going for the first one, promoting demand side and the use side and linked to policy and impact. Terrific. So thank you so much. First, I wanted to thank the audience for being here, helping us with this difficult task ahead of us, and being part of this discussion. I hope this would be something that you would remember. We'll continue these discussions, and maybe in the next World Data Forum, we will achieve at least have a much clearer set of building blocks that we will be pursuing. But most of all, I wanted to thank the speakers. They've been terrific, staying within their 5 minutes and getting hundreds of emails from me on organization of this panel. So I really, really wanted to thank them. And so join me to... I also wanted to thank my co-producer, Johannes, and of course, Peter and where did Deirdre go, for helping us with the organization of this session. Thank you. Thank you very much. Last word to Johannes.
Just very quickly, I want to thank Shaida and her dedicated team. I must say, if we talk about capacity development, because I have seen also, I was copied on all these emails. If somebody needs capacity in terms of organizing sessions, he or she should go to Shaida and see how this is done. So thank you so much, Shaida. And just one announcement, tomorrow we have to some extent some sort of a closing session for this thread tomorrow afternoon. So if you're still interested in pursuing this discussion, you are cordially invited tomorrow afternoon, where we pursue this further, also with commitments, how we can go forward for the next year. So thank you so much again for the whole panelists and for you for coming. Thanks.